I am so sorry. I do not know what happened here. Uh-oh. I'm so sorry, guys. I do not know what just happened, and I'm so sad about it. But I think we're gonna get everyone back. My connection, I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. Hi. All right, we got Edith back, Dede. So sorry, guys. I'm so sorry, guys. I have no idea what happened.
No
I am
worries.
so sad. It just
It's
disappeared.
loading.
Okay. I'm so
Hold on, I'm loading. I don't know
okay.
what's going on here.
I
Okay,
have the
we're
worst
back.
internet again, so I thought it was me at first.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt your genius,
it's
Miss
okay.
Viv.
It's okay.
Continue, my dear. And I'm so sad that the first part of this live, it's gone. I don't think I can save it because it disappeared. My app just totally died. I'm gonna cry. But we're gonna hopefully kind of just regroup and
Yeah.
continue. So what we were talking about before was some insensitive, maybe, comments, if you were to say, by this human who was a Mormon missionary who went to Peru. And I think the last thing you said was that he called Peru full of trash. Now,
Yes.
what I want to ask you before you continue is, for those people with the best of intentions who are like, what do you mean? Like, I I want to help Peru. I love Peru. And if it's full of trash, that's not my problem. I just want to help pick up the trash. Isn't that beautiful? Tell me what you would tell that person who wants to help Peru pick up trash in the streets.
Welcome. Yes, it's great for you to want to help us, but there were people already there doing it. And to have this man completely take over, like as if it was his idea to want to do this. Like, I don't knock him for having the best intentions, but they were not the best intentions because he took what he wanted to do and marketed it. Like it was literally a marketing ploy, a marketing strategy. He took our identity. He heard the language enough to want to imitate, because that's what it was, imitation of
Mm-hmm.
a certain way of speaking, because not all Peruvians have that accent. People that live in the Andes, they do not speak like that. People that live in Chaclarillos don't speak like that. People that
And
live
and for those who didn't start from the beginning with us, and now as the live was cut in half, we did a section in the beginning talking about the different parts of Peru. Some are coastal, some are in the Andes, the mountains, if you don't know what the Andes are, and some are in the Amazon rainforest. So there's not only many languages and many different cultures and many different tribes, we also have many different accents too. So continue, my dear. Just had to
yeah.
make that comment.
So
Mm-hmm.
he basically positions himself in a way where I can really make some money off this. I can really become an influencer. And Peru already has a glamorization of whiteness issue already. So it was definitely very easy for him to swoop in with his white savior ass and benefit from what other people have already been doing out there.
Now,
Because
oh,
no,
sorry, I don't
continue.
want to cut you off. What were you saying?
Because, there are people out there already trying
Mm-hmm.
to make Peru better. Better
Mm-hmm.
with racial issues, better with whatever garbage problem we has, because it's true, but that's true everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, the
The
whole
U.S. is
world has some
garbage.
garbage issues. Yes,
We all
exactly.
have garbage. Now,
Exactly.
I want to thank you so much for all of this wisdom, knowledge, and for your point of perspective. I want to go to Tere actually, because Tere, you had some really influential, highly viewed, and highly praised Instagram stories. You all did, by the way. You really did. But I want to go to you as someone who I feel like a lot of people quoted your stories, they loved it, and just someone who is both white presenting sometimes, as you said, and queer, and you just have a very unique perspective. Do you want to add anything to what Viv was saying?
It's a lot of other issues other than just racism and
Mhm.
privilege with what he's doing. There is ableism. I'm sorry, that's my STEM toy. I got nervous. Ableism, and there is misogyny involved in it. I'm sorry, that's my cat. So
All are
she woke up and
welcome.
said, so as a disabled Peruvian, being autistic, I not only am autistic, but I had cancer and I have all these other health issues going on. So I deal with chronic health and chronic mental health issues all the time on the daily since birth. So I love Peru and I feel more at home around my Peruvian family in a lot of ways. Like I love my family here a lot, but I don't feel as welcome because I'm treated very differently. And I understand that me feeling more at home in Peru has to do with the privilege of my skin. So that's something I have to continually check myself on, that it would not feel as comfortable or safe if I was darker. But I can't go back even if I want to, because one, we have a high rate of feminicidios, which is like violence against women, a high rate of violence against the queer community, and complete disregard of disabled people, unfortunately. Our country kind of views disabled people as a money suck, a drain on the economy, not worth it. As some people in my family would say, why would you complicate your life? Like, it's just, it's not seen as worthy of life as much. Like, you're worthy of life because you're part of the family. My father always said, like, if you were there, would you just because I'm loquito? Like, it doesn't provide you you're loved, but you're not provided with the accommodations you need to survive and thrive in that world. And you'll never be independent or on your own because you don't have those accommodations. So I can't go back, and he can go to this country that I love so much and learn basically slang, because it's just easier for him to, as Viv said, imitate. And he can wander through because he's a white cisgendered male. I look blanquita now, and that's who I am. I'm a white, that's my privilege. Female presenting, which is not a privilege in Peru. Bigender, autistic, chronically ill person who I can't go back no matter how much I want to. And if I do go back, then I have to deal with who's going to love me and take me as I am, because I am a lot to take on technically. So I think he is, and I think he knows, like, I know everyone wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he knows what he's doing, because the next day on his page, he did what most ableists and racists will do, who say they have the best intentions. He posted photos of himself with his few Latino friends, and even videos saying, like, I have an Ecuadorian here, I have an Argentinian with me, I have a Chilean with me. Like, look at all these Latinos I have with me. Look at how diverse my friends are. And all of them had like this face of, what the hell is going on? Like, what are we being? They're props to him. We are props to him for his success. He's now creating a company. And so I was like, I want to see if this man was anything extraordinary before he came to our country and started this thing. And I did a deep dive on his page and discovered that he was dimensionless before he got to Peru. There was nothing special about him. He was just an average cisgendered white Mormon, and there was nothing special about him. So he came to our country, and all of a sudden, when you, as a white person, come to Peru, especially if you come into a poor neighborhood and you've got white skin, everybody's going to be touching your skin. Everybody's going to be treating you like a god, and we treat our guests like we worship our guests. Food, we give them love, we dance with them, we play music with them, because that's how we are. And that's not always how the US is. We're very much like that. So he came and was treated like a god, kind of like if you've ever watched the movie El Dorado when you were a kid. Basically, he did what they did. He was nothing special when he was in his American area in the US. And he came here like a thief, got treated like a god, and then just didn't correct anyone and was like, I'm going to stay because it's awesome here. Why would I leave? And created a business and now profits off of us by using the Nazca lines in his business logo.
Ding, ding,
Which
ding.
That
I just want to
imitate.
pause you right there because I think that a lot of the things you said, I think people who are maybe of a Western, okay, we're using the old terminology, but Western or a Western country or or the United States might see a lot of those things as, that's fine. He went there. That's fine. He loved it. That's fine. He got Peruvian citizenship. Whoa, but okay, cool. Like, where's the bad? I see the most concrete, like, questionable thing, and I'm talking about like concrete in the books kind of thing. I mean, he obviously said a lot of hurtful words. I'm not Peruvian, so I can't even imagine the trauma that you guys and any other Peruvian has felt when he said those words. But the thing that I saw on paper that was truly like, okay, he's doing it for profit and it's blatant, is the sweatshirts. Shall we
Yes.
talk about the sweatshirts?
Like,
He sells merch, and it's not just any old merch. He made a video describing how he made the design on the merch, literally saying that he took it from an indigenous Peruvian design. Now, that also could be fine if the profits
If you do
were
research.
going
it's
to
not at
somewhere,
all.
right? Like if it were going to some Peruvian organization with good morals for Peruvians. But it didn't say that anywhere. So I am assuming, okay, journalists should never assume, but I am assuming he is getting those profits. Do you agree? Is he getting these profits? I don't
Yes.
know.
He's definitely
I
getting
think he
the
is.
profits. He is.
So
He
that's
is.
where it becomes problematic. Now, Edith, I want to give some time to you as well because I know that we've been going into this so deep, but you also have had blowing up Instagram stories and posts, and I mean, I saw your name quoted everywhere. So I want to give you the mic now to add on anything you think of, and also if you have anything to say about the sweatshirts.
Yeah, ever since I stumbled upon this man's page, I knew I didn't like him. And I also did like a deep dive like that I did. And it's funny because in his interviews, he's like, I'm not just some white man who wasn't cool in the United States that came to Peru to be cool. I'm like, that's literally exactly what you did. And the fact that you have to preface that every interview kind of makes it seem like you understand that too. And then, yeah, some great points were made, and obviously all the hurt that he caused through his, well, first of all, his whole influencer page, right? And then the podcast on top of that. And then the rebuttals on top of that, doubling down, saying that he is an immigrant, like has somehow like a shield to our criticism, right? And just saying all these absurd things, and reverse racism, which I don't think we even talked about.
I actually want to get into three things. Being an immigrant, reverse racism, these are things he quoted, and being a minority. When he said that, I nearly died, but trying to be all, professional here. But, okay, so
Yeah.
I want to give a little bit of my own perspective because I have lived in a lot of countries around the world. Not vacation, y'all. I have lived, okay? I have lived as someone who is the other in other countries. And it is hard when you live in another country and it's a new culture and a different language and people that are really gripping tight to their culture and language as they should, but maybe they were threatened from post-colonizers. They're kind of even more wanting to hold on to it. Anyone who's trying to learn the language, they'll like bolster you up. But then if you get like really good, they might be like, yo, what? No, like stop. And so I have felt that what he is kind of saying with the not 100% welcome thing, that's a vibe. But you're not a minority. And I just want to put that out there because you came to that country because you chose to go there, and the country that you're from, you have full ableist abilities to be the best, highest position you can be. That's the difference. Like,
Yeah.
if and some people say, well, people from Mexico come to the U.S. and they chose to come here. Sometimes they choose, sometimes they don't. But the issue is when they go back to Mexico, they might not be able to get to the highest position they could possibly be in. So being in the US is that safe space for them to try at least to get what they call the American dream, or the goals that they want to meet. He could essentially, this human could go back to the United States and, as a white cisgender male, make it pretty darn far if he focuses and does what he needs to do. So I kind of want to first touch on that. There was 3 things I said, but let's start with the minority thing. When you first heard him, and I'm gonna start with Edith because I want to give you more airtime here. Like, when he said minority, I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind, and I wanted to give it my perspective because I've been him in terms of the other who is learning, who loves other cultures and things like that. And I felt the otherness that he feels. But what is the problem, in your opinion, about the word minority?
So, like this, I don't think he understands what it is to be a minority at all, because he's lived a privileged life. He has said, to bounce off what you were saying, that like, I make a lot more money in my store, I'll make a lot more money in Salt Lake City, but I choose to go to Peru because I love it. So it's like, so you are very much like, you have money, you have a social structure and system set up, and you putting yourself in Peru and like saying it's like so hard to be, and he kept using the word illegal in Peru is just ridiculous. Like, that doesn't make you a minority in what sense? Because it's where he didn't talk about his white privilege at all. They didn't talk about colorism at all. Like, those things do come into effect socially. So it just didn't really make sense. Like, I didn't understand what he meant by minority at all. Like, just, you're an outsider. Like, you maybe felt othered for the first time in your entire life, and therefore you think being othered means you're a minority. I don't get it.
That was some liquid gold words right there. I mean, I couldn't say any better. Do you guys want to add anything? I think Edith, you got it. Like, that was
yeah.
That's perfect. Let's now go to the reverse racism comment, because that one was, I think that, and after this we're going to go to what the Peruvians in Peru were saying and how they were defending him. So if that's going to be part of this, we're going to hold off on that. But the reverse racism thing to me was like, okay, I think he just needs a little quick lesson. Like,
yes,
he probably just literally does not understand the concept. So let's give a lesson to all those humans who might think reverse racism is a thing. And you know what? Whatever thoughts y'all have, that does exist, but it's not called reverse racism. So whatever you're thinking could exist, but that's just not what it's called. So let's learn about what reverse racism is. Okay? So who wants to take this one?
I could take it, because
all right.
I literally have to educate people all the time on
I'm glad
the difference between racism and prejudice. Racism is based on power. It is asserting power over other people who, by caste, have less money, live in bad neighborhoods, don't have the best jobs, so quote unquote the minorities. Prejudice is based on human nature, characteristics. So for racism to work, for reverse racism to work, it would mean me, a brown person, a person of color, would have to have power over this white man. And systemically, we already know who has the most power. White people have invented racism to keep us down, to keep us from having better jobs, better home, better finances, better education. You know, I
Yes.
can decide, oh, I don't like Fulanito because I don't like the way he speaks, his attitude, he's too ghetto. That's a form of prejudice. These are words to describe behavior, and that is what prejudice is. And I mean, like, there's no way in hell that we as Peruvians in the diaspora could have more power over this white man who literally became a YouTuber influencer and is now making more money than the people who already live there.
That is
Just
key.
because he moved there.
Like, people who have businesses there. How are you receiving the short end of the stick of what is racism when these people literally have to work 3 times harder than you in a day, posting your pictures, posting your little videos to make ends meet, to
Let's not say work
pay,
harder,
you know,
but let's say like work more hours, maybe.
work more
Maybe.
hours,
Right? Yeah.
you know, work double to not even make a fraction of what you make, you know. So when we were calling him out about what he was saying, and he was like, you're a white man this, white man that, yeah, we were saying that because it is who you are. And I think that, you know, nobody likes a mirror held up to them, and we were his mirrors in what he was already feeling. Probably at home, he was probably an 8 person, and he came here and he was pretty much put on the pedestal. How dare you accuse Black, indigenous, brown folks of being racist to someone who was put on the pedestal from the very beginning?
There it is. You are respected, oh white man. You are respected in Peru. You can't receive racism if you are the top of the caste system, essentially. Right?
Exactly.
Now, in our previous live that got whatever, like erased, I don't know what happened, we were talking about the caste system and the history of Peru. And to summarize, the Spaniards, the Europeans, were on top. The people who have mixed race, which were Spaniard and indigenous, were in the middle. And the only reason they were in the middle is because they had a little bit of Spaniard in them, and the Spaniards wanted to keep their privilege and pass it on to their children. And the ones at the bottom were indigenous and African Peruvian, right? So the point that Viv is making here is that this man who is presently going to Peru, who presents closest to what a Spaniard would look like of those categories, he can't receive racism in that country because he looks like that caste. Correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Also, where CCD Explorer mentioned, where is he right now when Peruvians are dying of COVID? I am pretty sure he's in the US. He posted a bunch of videos in Utah. So
getting that vaccine.
Wow, I did not see.
Because
he's getting a vaccine because Peru is so big to distribute.
There's literally no
and I
vaccines
think that's a
in Peru.
Example.
No vaccines in Peru. No vaccines in Peru. There's no vaccine left.
Okay.
To the point that
the perfect example. He is able. That's it. He's able to get what he needs when he needs it. When push comes to shove, even let's say someone was racist against him, let's say, right? He can go back to the US and get what he needs. And that makes you not a minority. So a minority you can't break away from, like ever, you know? Like, even if you know, wished a million times, you can't change. But because he can move to a different place and receive privilege, you can't be a minority like that.
Well, other Peruvians are dying because they
So
can't get that
do you
vaccine.
guys, Tere and Edith, do you want to add anything?
Do you want to go or?
Oh, what were you saying? Oh, no. What were you saying, Tere?
Me? Oh, no, I was asking if Edith wanted to go.
Oh, Edith, I'm sorry. I can see.
Oh.
Go for it.
It's okay. I'm sorry. We were talking about what again? I got so enthralled in the conversation.
Oh. I know. No, I just want to know, because remember we were talking about those three things. So I just want to, before we moved on to the third thing that he said, I wanted to see if you guys wanted to add anything to that. This climate guy. We went so.
Actually,
well, we went everywhere.
I want to bring up, I don't know if everyone remembers in his stories where he asked a very simple yes or no question of like, do you think it's racist? Or do you think judging someone based on the color of their skin is racism? Yes or no? And like, that's it. Okay. And then obviously, how are you gonna vote on that?
So
and then using that to prove.
Get why. Let's talk about, for the people who don't get why that's wrong. This is why it's wrong. It's taken out of context, because of course everyone's gonna vote yes. Of course.
Yes.
Duh. If you were educated, you would know that. Even if you're not educated, you would know that. But he's taking it out of context to prove a point that may or may not be trying to aid in his support, right?
Yep.
Okay. So with the three things, now keep me accountable here. So reverse racism, we did another one, I'm blanking, and then we have a third one. He talked about,
what's it? Immigration.
Immigration. Immigration. So, Edith, would you like to start with this one? Because you have some background with like getting and citizenship and things like that. Do you want to talk about the process and like, I don't know, anything you have to say about him saying he's an immigrant?
Yeah, well, from his stories, it kind of made it seem like it was a shield, right? Like, I am an immigrant, therefore I have gone through troubled times, and you are judging me and you don't know me, sort of thing. And how hard it is for him to be, again, the word illegal, which we shouldn't use, saying that it's harder for him, not taking into account that he chose to move there, like Viv and Theta were saying, that he's just like making it set, like trying to say that I have struggled so much, right? And once I get my residency and once I get my DNA, your like Peru card, that he'll be Peruvian. And his definition of being Peruvian is very, I don't know if like caricature is the right word, but like Inca Cola, Machu Picchu, Lomo Saltado, whatever.
Inca Cola all the time. That's all I have in my fridge.
Yeah, so it's hard because he doesn't really understand like a true, I think, struggle of being an immigrant, and just using that loaded word. He's trying to get some sympathy none of us have for him whatsoever.
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't say no one, which brings us to our next point. If Teddy, do you have anything you want to add, or can I move on to the next point?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh wait, are we doing the next point, or are we still on immigration?
Well, I'm saying if you have something to say it now, because I want to move on to bridge from that comment.
Oh, no,
so if you want to add anything, go for it.
Okay. So I can say I grew up in a family that tells themselves that they're 100% Spanish, even though some of our cousins are indigenous by marriage, and then other cousins are like, I found out last year that that was a lie. And so I'm not really allowed to talk about it, so I'm probably going to get in a lot of hot water for it. But we're predominantly Spanish, but like not 100. And so I grew up hearing all the time like that white people are made fun of in Peru. Like some of my relatives were made fun of for being too light. And then, you know, wait, I'm sorry. What were we on again?
Immigration.
My brain.
Immigration. Yeah.
With the immigration. Yeah. My father immigrated here from Peru to get married. He wanted to be with my mother. And my dad actually immigrated for a similar reason to this guy. He loved the US. He loved the South specifically because, you know, being white in the South had its benefits. And my dad's very light. He's about my tone now. And he came over to be here and start a family. And because I think he just, you know, I don't know, he just said he liked it here. So I don't want to tell his story, but I do remember that he'd said he came to get married to be a part of the South because he liked it here. And he still had more trouble than that man will ever have. Like, as soon as he got here, my mother remembered that a person who was on her neighborhood board said that they wanted to call ICE on him immediately. And they didn't want him here. And I've seen white men talk down to my dad my entire life, and my dad doesn't recognize it because he's like, I refuse to be a minority. I am white like everyone else. He's got that internalized, I am white. And I'm like, Papito, I don't want to have to, like, you're their token. You're the thing that they talk about on Twitter when they're like, well, my Peruvian friend says I can say this. And you can't. It's not okay. And when people move over here, like my dad went through hell to get his citizenship. He worked so hard. And he went from, you know, he's a teacher here now. And he used to spend every summer in Salamanca getting his master's degree in Spanish to make sure that he could teach here. And I just remember dealing with all of the people who would say like, well, why is he here? And that's something that a white man, when he comes to the US, if you moved here from Sweden, nobody would be like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Because you're white. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be as many obstacles. So even for the whitest Peruvian you're going to find, aside from having blonde hair, like my dad had red hair when he was young, lighter skin, and moving here, everybody was still like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, let me just touch on this one thing that you said, because I'm sure if this live is going to be like recorded or quoted, they're going to go to that comment you said about like, it was hard being white in Peru. So can you explain that so that someone doesn't take that out of context and run?
No, so I have family that thinks it is.
Yeah.
But that's more because Peru has yet to address. And this is, this is what I really wanted to go into. So as someone who has a white family in Peru, they say that they're not racist, but it's kind of like here where they're like, I'm not racist, but, and the but is the important part in that. And that's something I've had to try and I've worked talking with my dad and with other members of the family for a long time about how, yes, you can say you're not racist. And yes, you can have the best intentions. But your intentions don't mean that much if your actions are continually harmful. And if you continue to use like skewed and twisted statistics to justify why you're treating a minority this way. My dad was around, he was in medical school during the time of Fujimori's reign when there was a mandate sent down to doctors to, and I want to trigger warning this, but there was a mandate sent down by doctors by the government to doctors to forcibly sterilize indigenous women that came in for anything like an appendectomy. And he remembers when that was put down, and he didn't have to do that, but he remembers the way that they told it to them. He's like, it made sense at the time because they were like, there's too many indigenous babies being born because they can't afford contraceptives and things like that. So we're just making sure that these indigenous babies are not a strain on the economy. I said, Papi, I need you to realize how flawed that is, because that's not true. That's them coming up with an excuse to say, this is an unwanted population. Why are we not sterilizing white women the same way we're sterilizing indigenous? If we're getting rid of having babies because it's a financial strain on the economy, do babies across the board. Why is it just indigenous babies? And so that's something that we have to address. And even when your family does little things like, we're 100% Spaniard, not indigenous at all. And they'll say that they love indigenous people and support indigenous people. But the jokes are real. The jokes that you hear, I went to Peru when I was 12. They make entire games out of, there's like a game that's a version of Punch Buggy in Arequipa, because you don't see a lot of Black people in Arequipa, or that I was told at the time. And there's a version of Punch Buggy for when you see a Black person in Arequipa. And then they have all these jokes about how indigenous people are not smart. And I remember being there as a 12-year-old who went to school with all kinds of different colors of people and was just like, what is happening right now? That was where the disconnect was for me. It was like, what is happening and how do I address this with my own family without getting kicked out? Because we say we're not racist, because you can say, I'm Latino, I'm not racist.
And I'm not even Peruvian. Like, that's so hurtful.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's sad. Like, Peru definitely has a huge racism problem towards Black and indigenous folks. Like, in 2009 is when Peru finally decided to apologize to the Black community for the mistreatment of, the people in 2009.
Wow.
Like,
only
how many
couple hundred years,
yeah,
a little late, but
and
wow.
With what they're doing now, with like changing the designs of the chocolates, like we have a chocolate, my personal fave, Doña Pepa, and they're now changing what these chocolates are called because it looks now racist. Great. But that's not what we're asking for. Like, through so many years of mistreatment, and even me, like, I carried, such a shame. Like, my grandma, beautiful, beautiful Black woman, and even till like her last days, I always told her how beautiful she was. But getting emotional. She has seen, I bet that she has seen so many things growing up. And this is like the 20s, the 30s, She was one of 12 kids, dark. She had to go work as a maid to make some money. And through all that mistreatment of being Black, looking different than some of your family members, she grew up with that shame, and she didn't want that for her kids. She married a light-skinned indigenous man from Cerro de Pasco, which is there is literally the highest point on top of the Andes. And her kids came out light-skinned. I am dark. My sister's a little darker. My dad is Black. He's a Black indigenous man, and my mom is Teres skin complexion. So to grow up, not only now being questioned by my own Peruvian company, my own Peruvian community, not being Peruvian enough, to now being questioned at parent-teacher conference, or when my mom shows up in school, is that your mom? Because, my mom is lighter, to now carry that shame. And I did not, my grandma was also telling us, you need to marry the white man para levantar la sangre, para levantar la raza. You have to whiten the blood, because that's the only way that your kids will benefit. They will not know shame. They will not know what it is to be mistreated because of the color of your skin. And those are things that I feel that this man did not take in account when he told us that we were ashamed of being Peruvian. What we are ashamed of is being mistreated by our own people, because they were so colonized to the point where it was like, what I always use to describe is the Beauty and the Beast analogy. The beast was Belle's captive. That Stockholm syndrome. Till at the end, she fell in love with him, kissed him, and made him human. the point is that that Stockholm syndrome is very alive today in our country because of the belief that our captives didn't come to mistreat us, they came to save us. But in the end, it created generational trauma that we are literally living every single day to break. You know, my sister has 2 kids. One is a little lighter than the other, my niece. I try to show her every day how beautiful she is because of the color of her skin, because I don't want her to carry the same thing that I carried, the same thing that my grandmother carried. And to have this guy tell me that I'm not Peruvian enough, that I'm ashamed of being Peruvian because now I don't speak like him, because I don't live there, it wasn't my choice. You know, my parents led a privileged life. They had good jobs. You know, we had a good home. My dad worked a good job. And because of el Fujimorismo, terrorism, the inflation that Fujimori brought is why we left. We were basically run out of our own countries because of the resources being depleted from us. And to have this guy just come and say, this identity is mine. Like, do you really want this identity? Because this is what we carry as part of our identity. And
exactly.
It's just like, it's a lot of unpacking that goes within this Peruvian identity. But what really is, you know, Peruvian identity? What really is Peru? You know, because we are so many things, so many things.
Yeah, you can't just get the good stuff. You know,
exactly.
This is what being a real minority is like. This is what racism truly feels like. And you can't escape that trauma. That trauma came through generations. So that's why you can't call yourself a minority or an undocumented immigrant for in a way to bring other people closer to your story, because this is the story that is original that we are talking about here. Thank you so much, Viv, for sharing that. That was a really beautiful and clear and articulate testament to what we're trying to explain here. You know, this is like exactly what I wanted to show the world, because I think that perfectly ties into this topic here. I don't know how much time y'all have, but this should be our last question or our last topic. Before, if anyone has any questions, you can throw them in the chat and then ask anyone whatever you want. But just the actual today's, like, the vibe of today in Peru and what the people in Peru are doing and how they're reacting to this person's comments, which I think that many Peruvians outside of Peru would find very shocking. And I'm going to just brief the humans who don't know. They love this guy. They think he is awesome. There have been comments that are like, don't listen, like Peruvians saying, don't listen to those other Peruvians. Like, I don't know, they might have something bad in their hearts. You're awesome. You're doing great. So how can, now, a person who doesn't know this topic at all, how can two Peruvians not agree with each other? Well, the Peruvians inside Peru, in my opinion, and please just correct me if I'm wrong, they are still under that, as you said, like Stockholm syndrome kind of vibe. I keep saying vibe, but it's so true. It's like almost like when you go into a country, it's like the stuff is still there. The history is still there in that like colonial mindset of like, I can't do, you know, I can't be this thing, and this thing is the white man, right? You want to be that so badly. So what I kind of see what this guy did was like, he became the cool kid in school that everyone wants to be.
Yeah.
So the cool kid in school, everyone wants to be cool. And so the thing that was uncool, which we didn't really touch on, which is speaking a native language, right? And this guy, actually, this white man who we're talking about, speaks Quechua. Awesome, right? Like, wow. I mean, but what's the issue here? So Quechua was a language that was told by the Spaniards to these people who speak Quechua, the indigenous language, do not speak Quechua. You have to speak Spanish now. And they were shamed for speaking Quechua. And a lot of people lost their language through that shaming process. So now this guy is speaking Quechua, and people like the Peruvians outside of Peru are like, bro, like, you know, we couldn't even speak Quechua growing up. Like, this is like, it's not cool to flaunt it in the way you're flaunting it. The Peruvians inside Peru are still part of the high school mentality of, you're the cool kid. Oh my gosh, he's allowing Quechua to be cool again. He's speaking Quechua, so we're gonna support that because we can't. So the closest thing we can do is like praise the white man for speaking Quechua. So that's why there's a difference here. And I kind of wanted to touch on that because I don't think people really saw the connection here. So do you have anything to say about that? Ida, Tere, I know, like, I wanted to ask you guys first.
So honestly, I think it's more of years after years after years of being ignored. Like when you go out to a club, when people talk about DJs mention Latinos, Puerto Rico, Dominicans, everything else, and what about Peru? And I think it's just like nobody knows what Peru is, and if it wasn't for the food, the señorita Laura, who's literally like a shame, like if Peruvians in Peru have to pick a shame, it's her, you know? And it's just being ignored and not know what it is. And now he's here putting it on the map. They're like, oh my God, we're finally going to be seen. Mm-hmm. You know, we're finally going to be glamorized of the good parts. Mm-hmm. And not the bad parts, not the racism, not the classism, not the colorism. We're going to be known as, you know, we hold on to being we win 8 years in award of the best gastronomy. You know, our food is amazing 8 years in a row. And that's one thing that we hold on so much because we do not want to remember the ugly. And he is, quote unquote, putting us on the map of what is, you know, Peruanidad in Peru, along with, you know, being Peruvian, who is doing that on his own. You have this white man's like, oh my God, look at him. Because, you know, I got to admit, my mom loved him. And when I tried to speak to my mom about what is wrong with this, you know, she completely, you know, like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think it's also more like, you know, Peruvians from the diaspora, we have a problem with this. And Peruvians from over there know is because they have their identity. Their identity isn't being taken from them. Our identity is because we've been fighting so hard to keep it. You know, we have that struggle. And I think that that is where the mix is, because there are Peruvians in Peru who don't like him either. But there are way too many important things to fight for than to continue to argue with this man who is literally not going to get it. Because again, white people only want to hear their own shit. You know, they don't want to hear, you know, that they're a problem. You know, they want to be glamorized. They want to feel like kings because that white saviorism, that colonialism is in their blood. It doesn't matter how much of an ally they say that they are. That allyship always needs to be questioned. Are you doing this because you really believe in us? You really believe in our struggle? Or are you doing this just so you can kick something off your bucket list?
And we don't know his intention with that, but that's interesting to question. Now, I want to just read a comment from Peruvians of the USA, the account here. It was exactly what we were trying to, well, I was trying to explain here. They said, an observation. Peruvians in the USA yearn for their culture/country. Some Peruvians in Peru still yearn for otherness. Would you guys agree to that statement?
Yep.
Yes.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that it's important to not demonize either side, because both sides have the same trauma, but you guys are just in different stages of it. So the ones who are in Peru, like, we can't be hating on the Peruvians in Peru for liking this guy, because I mean, the history is right there. You know what I mean? I think it's important to extend love to those Peruvians because they're still in their trauma process. It's the fact that we are, like, a lot of people will say woke, you know, like, we're woke because we've left Peru and kind of we see the problems more clearly. I think it's important to just say, like, instead of like, oh, like, you know, they're unaware, we're aware, maybe we can use like different terminology as like, you know, we're in different stages of the trauma process, you know, because I
Yes.
think only division can make the colonizer win, right? So I think that it's important that we just kind of validate everyone's experience, and maybe if you can, in a very light and like kind way, because I mean, someone in trauma who's a step behind you, you need like extra love and kindness, right? To open the discussion, because maybe they never even thought of this. You know what I mean? Maybe they know their history, but they've never thought about how problematic some things are if they're a step, you know, behind your step in the trauma process. So to all the Peruvians who love this human that we're talking about, we love you, okay? But, you know, it's important to realize, you know, the state and path of the trauma and how it relates to history. So I think we would all agree to encourage you guys to read more, understand more, and to watch this live, because these are 3 Peruvian Americans who have left Peru and are seeing the culture in a different light outside of the bubble, right? So hopefully this has been something that everyone, Peruvians, non-Peruvians, Peruvians in Peru, Peruvians in the US, Peruvians everywhere, and non-Peruvians can really learn from. All of your statements and testimonies were incredible, and I'm just so honored to have listened to your stories. I mean, liquid gold, guys. You guys, this is so, so, so important, and I hope that you share this with everyone you know, because I think more people need to hear about this. Like, some things that you were saying, even about the Fujimori, like, inflation, that is like literally what's happening in Lebanon right now. These topics are not isolated to Peru. These topics can happen in your own backyard, y'all.
Facts. And
So,
I think
I want you to share this, because I don't want history to repeat itself.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you know, like, things that we also need to take into account, because, you know, like you said, we also need to be sensitive to, you know, the way other people process. So many things have happened in Peru and continue to happen, especially for the people that, you know, live there, what they live with every single day. You know, there are things to them, you know, more important than to focus on a particular issue about how we feel and our growth and stuff like that. You know, they got to focus on surviving and getting their next meal and where their paycheck is going to come from, because in COVID right now, it's very incredibly rampant out there, you know, so jobs are scarce.
I feel like we could get into a whole thing about like vaccine disparity, and I can't even imagine, like, in the mountain regions where the indigenous people are still living and practicing their cultures, and like how they get the vaccines out there. I mean, I'm sure it's crazy, and we can have a whole live about that, but we gotta keep ourselves up to date with what's going on. If you guys hear anything about like COVID vaccine distribution or anything like that, like, guys, I would love to have you back again for another live if you ever want to discuss anything about Peru. Peru is like in my heart. I've never been there, but I feel so connected to the culture and the language. It's so beautiful. And if you guys don't know a lot about Peru, like check it out. Go do a little like Google search online. Go through Google Maps. Walk through the streets. It is an incredible country, beautiful culture. The music is fire. Okay, like literally, it'll get you out of bed in the
Yeah.
morning. So fun. The food is amazing, especially
I
because
mean,
in the U.S. we have
Culinary
right? Like, I
destination.
mean, so I'm obsessed with the big corn. You know what I'm talking about? Like the big corn.
la
Yo,
cancha, la
corn
cancha.
is like
Yeah,
bigger.
Oh,
Yes, it is like bigger than anything you. It's
yeah.
so. I literally got Peruvian food last month, and I was just like, I need this.
Yo,
Like, I literally never go out to eat, and I was just like, I need takeout today, and it has to be
the
Peruvian. Like, guys, I mean, literally, like we have Italian food, we've got American food, like I mean American like estadounidense, like United States, like burgers and all that. We've got Indian food, but it's like, y'all, if you want to switch up your routine,
yo,
get
that
yourself
choclo with that
an incredible
ceviche.
ceviche. I was literally about to say ceviche. Oh my
Yeah,
god. Okay,
quinoa,
I
try
was like,
quinoa warm. What's with this called quinoa?
yes,
yeah. Oh my
yes.
God,
Can
the
we just
quinoa.
Can we just
Listen,
mention really quick as a fun fact? By the way, if you guys have any questions, please write them in the chat for any of these amazing humans here. Please write them in the chat while we obsess about Peruvian food. Can we make a note that quinoa did not come from the United States Whole Foods?
no,
Where did
It didn't
quinoa
come from
officially come
Rebecca.
from?
Peru. Well,
Peru.
along the Andes, because there's several,
Peru and the Andes. Of course.
yeah,
Oh, what y'all
wherever
should
the
know is
Andes is located.
exactly like whatever when we say Peru, we mean the Andes because of course before all of these state lines, and I say states meaning states like a country state, there were no borders. So the Andes went through like Ecuador as well and lots of other countries. So
Colombia.
wherever the Andes are, quinoa
Yeah,
came from, and one of those is Peru. So thank a
yeah.
Peruvian for your quinoa.
My grandma used to make the best quinoa sopa. Oh my God.
Yes.
Memories.
Soup? Wait a second. Okay, I need
Quinoa
some
soup.
I need
Oh,
some food inspo. Like, wait, how
Quinoa
did she
soup.
make that? Quinoa?
I mean,
Like in
so
broth or like
in broth, in broth. So basically in Peru, we have this sopa called aguadito. And the aguadito gets rice in it. You have your rice, you have your papa, because we love to pack on those carbs. Like we are carbs on carbs on carbs on carbs on carbs. Throw some C's on that shit. And we, we have our papa, our arroz.
Everything's got French fries.
Exactly. And then we'll have extra arroz on the side because now we gotta eat the soggy arroz that's in the papa, and then we have to take the juice from the sopa and put it on top of the rice, and then eat our meat that goes in it, right? But instead, my grandma would make an aguadito de quinoa. So instead of putting actual rice, she would put the quinoa.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, do we have some questions? Okay. Awesome. Okay. To all panelists, what our plans is, okay, I think he meant what is the
What are the
plan
plans to
to overthrow white supremacy? That's a very intense topic. And thank you for asking. Overthrow. Okay, so let's just address really quick before I hand to the panelists about this. Overthrow white supremacy means that white supremacy isn't a ruling body officially. I mean, I would say it's more of a social issue than an actual government, even though white supremacy could be in government. So we're going to watch our language here. But I think that what you mean is how can we combat it? So I don't know. I think that before I hand it off to the panelists, I just think it's just having open discussions like this. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What you said, I think to combat it, I mean, clearly, white supremacy is in our current government right now. And even though right now, because of who we have as president, it might not be up here anymore, it might be here, we still have to be aware and constantly have conversations and, constantly fight it to dismantle it. Dismantling it is, overthrowing it is having these discussions, you know, having someone like Tere go on her stories and flame these people who their white fragility is like through the roof with their little white tears, you know, just keep talking about it. So maybe people can now become more aware of where the problem lies.
Yeah. Tere, what do you think?
I feel like first and foremost, what needs to happen is like for at least for Peru specifically, because Peru takes so much time, like Viv said earlier, you know, we're worried about jobs, we're worried about, you know, earthquakes are so common there, mudslides are so common there, we're worried about all these natural disasters and other things. We don't have time to talk about social issues as much. But finally, Peru is starting to have these dialogues about like violence against women, violence against queer people, and racism. And racism's always been a conversation, but now it's kind of creeping up to the front a little more for the first time, which is great. Fantastic of our generation of Peruvians to do. But one thing I've noticed in all, because before coming on here, I was like, I want to make sure I have all my facts on everything right. So I watched newsreel after newsreel after newsreel on stuff in Peru. And what I'm noticing is that Peru's definition of racism is very different to the way we define racism.
Yes.
And that's because Peru is tired. They've got other things they're worrying about. So they define racism as just the color of your skin. And so that's why white Peruvians feel emboldened to be like, yes, you are being racist against this white man who's not even from here. And it's more about like, you'll have white Peruvians cry and center themselves. And we're like, stop crying. I understand that you're upset. And I want to say to white Peruvians, I understand that when you are called out and called in, that it feels like an attack if you've never heard that you're doing something wrong before. If you've never been called out before and you've never been the problem in your mind before, then being called out for the first time is a shock to your system, and you have to process that just like any other machine. And at first, you're going to feel attacked. It's going to feel like an attack because it hurts you to feel like you're doing something wrong, because we never get called out because of our skin. We do everything right. But the problem is that that's the issue, is that we're never called out. And when we finally do, we need to take a minute to be like, okay, I realize that I feel attacked in this moment. And this is actually part of DBT because I have a mood disorder. So I'm actually using this is actually really useful for white people too, to not be so fragile. To sit there and assess the situation in your head before you react and say, I realize that I feel attacked. This feels aggressive to me because I feel hurt by it. And I feel hurt by the idea that there's something wrong with me. However, is this person actually attacking me? Do they have a knife over me? Are they standing over me? Are they screaming at me incessantly? Are they talking down to me? Is this person actually threatening me, or are they just telling me how they feel about what I'm doing? And if they are just telling me how they feel about what I'm doing, then I need to take a breath. I need to actually hear them and not listen to respond, but actually listen to understand. And I need to say, I didn't know that this was happening because I didn't have to see it because of my skin. I've never had to see it before. That's why I've never seen it. And I'm sorry that I haven't been there for you because I haven't seen it. Now that you've told me, now that I can point it out and see it in future scenarios, I will be there for you because you are a fellow Peruvian, because you are a fellow community member, and because you are important and you are valid. And then on the next token, for indigenous Peruvians and Black Peruvians, and I say this in the nicest way possible, stop accepting the bare minimum from us. Just like you won't, ladies, stop accepting the bare minimum from men in your life. Stop accepting the bare minimum from white Peruvians, because we provide the absolute bare minimum every day. And by bare minimum, it's just like, I don't say racist things in front of you, but I might say behind your back. And that's not enough. We need to hold white Peruvians accountable for what they do. If you say that you're not racist, it's like math class. Show me your work. Show me your work. What are you doing every day? Are you standing, when I say that I have a problem with another white Peruvian, are you coming with me to fight this fight? Are you supporting me? Are you talking to that other white Peruvian? If I'm talked over by another white Peruvian, are you stopping them and saying, no, don't talk over her or them or him? Are you showing up for your queer Peruvian community members? Are you showing up for your disabled community members? Or are you just saying that I'm not racist, so it's fine, I don't have to do anything, I've already done the work? Like, for instance, my father used to say, and he'll tell you, like, he has internalized classism and internalized racism, but he has friends of every single color, because he says, I don't care about anything except, I don't care about the color of your skin. All I care about is, do you strive for excellence? Do you do the best you do? And that is its own issue that I'll get into in a live later. But the important thing that needs to be discussed is that that's the bare minimum. That is the bare minimum. It's not about whether they're too ghetto or they're too loud or they're too whatever. You support people because they're people, not because they're what you want them to be. And he always will say, why do you have to do all this work for all of these people? Why'd you complicate your life? Because I complicate my life a little. It really doesn't complicate my life all that much, first of all. But I'm not black or brown or like brown anymore. So I don't have to, I'm not affected by anti-blackness or anti-indigenous sentiments. So I can output, if I make my life 1 degree a little bit more complicated, then that means that someone who deals with an extremely complicated life every single day, every second of every day, gets to take a breath, gets to step back and not have to educate another white Peruvian on why this is so hurtful to them. Doesn't have to not cry in front of a white person who is saying something horrible to them and like keep their cool while a white Peruvian cries about, why are you telling me I did something wrong? So instead I can step in and be like, are you good? Are you okay? Would you like me to explain this to this person? And I'm obviously not going to interrupt, but if that person is like, I can't do this right now, can you take this? It's my job as a white Peruvian to be there for my other Peruvians and say, look, she shouldn't have to output this energy at all. I'm going to complicate my life 1 degree more because you are my kind of Peruvian. You're in my kind of circle of Peruvians. You're white like me, which means you are my responsibility. It's my responsibility to make sure that what you do, because you represent other white Peruvians, is not negatively impacting brown, black, and Asian Peruvians, so that we are represented well and we are changing. The responsibility of racism is on other white Peruvians. We need to not be the bare minimum. I'm sorry, I ranted, but I was upset about it.
That was like, I mean, the most beautiful rant like ever.
Listen.
That was filled with wisdom. Like, Teddy, like, I am floored. Like, I know you've been through like so much and you're still going through so much, and like the knowledge that you spit is just so fire. I just have to like commend you. Like, that was just so, and like you touched even on another topic, which is like internalized racism within the community itself, like, and keeping like Peruvians accountable, like liquid gold, man. Thank you for bringing that up. Like, so fire. Thank you. Now, Edith, do you have anything you would like to add on this topic as well?
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring up internalized racism and like white supremacy. So when I went on my IG rants about this man, I had a old estranged dance friend slide into my DMs talking about how I was being super racist and that I just want to be Pocahontas and that I was born here and of only Peruvian blood, which like totally negated his whole defense of the white man anyways. And then just, I didn't expect this from a fellow friend, Peruvian dancer. You know, I grew up in this group with him. And it was just like a shock because I had all these amazing Peruvians in my DMs. Like, I made so many friends through this, right? And I felt like even though this was an awful thing that happened, like this beautiful community sprouted from this. But then someone in the same community like came out and was trying to hurt me and said some very violent things that kind of messed me up for the whole night. I like couldn't sleep.
Show me either, and I was on vacation. Like,
yo,
you're supposed to rest. Yeah.
Wow. He's so divisive that he turns Peruvians against each other.
Exactly. Yeah. When you don't expect that, you think that.
Was this person? I'm trying to understand this. Was this person like a white Peruvian, or like what was
No,
what
he's
was
a
the
very,
vibe?
like, very brown, tall, dark man. I would say indigenous. I'm not sure what region of Peru, so I can't like specifically
And,
say, but
and is he living in Peru like to this day,
no, he's
or
in the
is he?
United States and apparently had this. So it seemed like he was coming into defense of that man because, of course, my stories. And then also, this man has been to his house several times and says he's a really cool guy. So instead of,
Oh,
you
so he
know,
knows him
He
personally.
drinking that
Okay.
Kool-Aid
a couple
too.
times though, he knew me my whole life. He knew me since I was like 4 years
Wow.
old. But this white man that he has known for a handful of times, he will defend and attack, right? To
So to
uplift.
me, as
Is
like
that attachment of whiteness
psychological
be real?
mindsets here, like I think yes, like to me, like psychologically, I feel like someone who would do that has been either like bullied in their childhood for being Peruvian, is so wanting so bad to be the cool kid, in this case white, or having any kind of like connection to that, because there's no explanation for someone who, and you've never had a bad relationship before this. It's not like, oh, I was about to hate you and then I did. No, like you grew up with this person, you knew him since he was 4. Like, so I think to me, like, you know, when you see on those like, inspirational quotes pages, it's like, you never know what someone's going through. Like to me, that's real. Like this, like always go into it thinking about, it's can be very shocking, and there in no way do you have to continue to allow yourself to be around people with that kind of energy. Like, girl, I am the queen of cutting people out. Like I am
Yeah.
not, like,
Your appendix
mental
is
health,
bad for you when you cut
mental
that
health
out.
over everything, y'all. Right? Mental health over everything.
Yo,
What I'm saying here is like, remember where his mind is at. You know what I mean? Like, always look at people from like their childhood. I feel like someone's childhood and their society dictates them for like the rest of their lives. So you probably hit a nerve with him because he felt
Changed his
so
vibe.
insecure about being Peruvian, you know what I mean? And finally felt cool being Peruvian with someone who could validate his coolness, right? And when a person in his childhood came back and came for that, he was probably like, "Meh." You know what I mean? Like, we all have that internal child, and his internal child was like not having it. So in those times, y'all, because I'm sure in the indigenous community, Peruvian community, and every other community, you're going to receive hate comments, right? And there's so many ways to address hate comments, and I'm really sorry that you had to hear like violent comments. That's a scary one. But like, literally, always remember that it's their internal child screaming. It's their
yeah,
internal child screaming and trying to come out in a very weird way. It's almost like a cry for help, but not to you. It's just like they feel unsafe, and they want to console that inner child that didn't get whatever they needed at that time. So, people can say like, ignore the hate comments, or respond to the hate comments, or look at them and say, oh, poor them. It's not really poor them. It's what they went through before, and to empathize with that, because we've all felt every emotion in life, and those people that make hate comments have those big emotions that they are really kind of putting out into the world. So we just kind of have to be sensitive to that. And on that
yeah.
same topic of like white fragility, as someone of color, I'm sure you look at those people and you roll your eyes like, come on, bruh, you have no idea what it's like to be me. But what you also have to remember is you have no idea what it's like to be them. And those people have never had these struggles, so they have no idea. So even when they get a teeny struggle, it's a big deal for them. So to the people who are white, who have felt really sad and angry about being called racist, cry it out. Cry it out, y'all, because that is a real feeling for you.
Because that's not their burden.
So cry it out. Yes. So true feelings, but you don't have to make people of color feel bad about it because it wasn't them that created this system at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So I want you all to validate your feelings, but just know that you have to, do your research and understand why you're feeling like that. So amazing question. That just kind of like got us. Oh my gosh, we have 3 more. I don't know how much time you guys have, but we'll do a rapid fire round. Whoever wants to talk on it, just go. We'll just do one answer. So it says, any tips on talking to family who aren't as woke about the internalized racism and underlying self-hatred within, I think he was going to say within our community. That's a really good one. Anyone want to snatch that?
Listen, I have taken that burden on because I feel, I don't want to call it woke, but having this type of education, having the privilege to heal the bags that you're carrying on your shoulders, because it's not just my bags, it's my grandmother's, it's my ancestors. It can be a burden. And if you're going to talk, to your family, do it with a lot of love, because I get into arguments almost every day trying to point that stuff out. And even me, I have to, take a pause and just remind myself that not everyone is ready to tackle that, because it's a lot of unpacking. And I think that if you're going to end up talking to your family, definitely be very aware that you're going to open up a can of worms that possibly wasn't worried, and you got to do a lot of self-care because it's going to be very ugly. That process is not beautiful at all. It is ugly, and it's a gift. It's both a gift and a curse, a gift and a burden. I don't want to call it a curse, a gift and a burden to want to be a better person, not just for yourself, but also help your family be better as well. And baby steps, pick one thing and go at it slow, because let me tell you, it's hard that sometimes I have to sit down and I have to cry and feel it, because it also, the arguments sometimes make me, very insecure and make me question myself, like, why am I doing this? Why do I want to make these people better? And you're going to question yourself a lot, and you're going to want to shut them out. But you know what? Family is the only thing that you have left at the end of the day. And even if it's toxic family, one day you're going to have to forgive them, but forgive them for yourself, and forgive the trauma to be able to heal.
That's so key. I've even felt this like sometimes within my own extended family. Sometimes you just have to look at reality and be like, okay, present tense, right? I have this family. It is not as like educated, like what you said, like it's not as educated on these issues as I am. And, your family, thinking like parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, they're older than you, right? And you only have about 30, 40 years with them, right? And then you have 30 years after they pass away. So in the time that you're alive, try to educate them. But if it's too much of a mental health task for you, just don't talk about it. Enjoy each other's company, do other things that you agree with. If it doesn't work with you educating, you did your best, and it's not your responsibility to educate people who are older than you. However, I do think that it is a duty as us older folk, but not the to educate the younger generation. So like that younger generation is going to come after us, right? So if you're woke, as they say, woke, right? That's awesome because you are going to be the top generation. And everyone else after you is going to be woke because of you. So if you're not able to like awaken the past generations,
Yeah, you got to pick and
tried,
choose your
right?
struggle.
I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like a slight disagreement on that, only because
Okay, tell.
like if you have a parent like I I list this as, you could say, prejudice against white men, but I have an aversion to white men growing up in the US being called llama, being called la gasolina girl, or like people singing la gasolina every time I walk by, or calling me Maria and Lupe, or like dealing with white boys who used to call me Pocahontas, because I was darker when I was little and I had a braid, which is so basic. And dealing with that kind of thing, my relationships with white men, I felt small, and I always made myself smaller because anytime a white person's in the room, I make myself smaller. So I have an aversion to dating white men now, and I don't ever want to do that again. I want to make sure that next time I date another person, I feel like we're on an equal playing field in some way. So I know for myself that my child is at least going to be a quarter Peruvian if I do end up with a white person, and then half of something or whatever if I don't. And my family in Peru, they're as loving and wonderful as they are. I remember our family discussing their reactions to cousins or uncles that married indigenous people, aunts or uncles, and to children that were a little bit darker because of their parents, because of the married into parent. And then for the US perspective, I lived here with family that treated me a lot different than my white sister. And I had a cousin call me on the phone one time talking about it, and I said, I don't understand why I've always been put into this position in our family our whole life. He said, did you ever think of it was because you were the only brown one when we were little? Because I saw it all the time, and I stopped wanting to hang out with our family because of it. And so my thing is, I need to educate them, even though they're old, because I refuse to let my future child grow up in a family that only loves them if they maintain the status quo and they act as white as possible. And they don't
Facts.
mention their other parts, because your other parts make you a whole. And I had to hide my Latinidad, or Latinidad is not a good word, but my Peruvianness and my dancing and my singing and my language from my family on this side. And when I went back, I didn't feel the same type of Peruvian as everybody else, because in the US I was treated like any other immigrant child or first gen child. So I was like, I don't feel as up top as you guys feel with your skin color, because I've been treated like second or third class citizen my entire life, and I don't identify with that experience. Like I may be part Scottish, but I don't have the lived experience of a Scottish woman in the US, and I refuse to let my children constantly feel like something is wrong with them, or they're othered, or they're not enough for their family, or that because they're different, it's easier to blame them for things.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that experience. That's definitely another side of it, especially if you're in a biracial family and you have that sort of mentality. So thank you. Always, by the way, in our future lives, please feel free to disagree with me and bring up points, because now we're even more woke thanks to this.
Yeah. You know, this
All
is
right.
this is why we need to do the work for the babies, and this is why,
Yes.
you know, as much as it hurts, you know, when I argue with my mom and my sister about, you know, the toxic shit that they say, I have to do this work for my niece, because I'll be damned if she grows up with any complejo because of the color of her skin, the way she looks, her features, because she's also chubby, you know, and I don't want her to have any type of body dysmorphia or nothing. Like we constantly listen to Beyonce's brown skin girl. Constantly.
I'm obsessed with that song. I play it all the
Because
time. I love that.
because of that song, and even though she features a lot of dark skinned women, she looks at these women, she listens to that song, and she sings it to herself, and she's like, she looks like me. She has curly hair like me, and that is how I want her to see herself, and not carry.
And the way you're being
Oh,
intentional about that is so important. Now, because of the old generation versus the new, we're the middle people. So we have to be extremely intentional about it so that future generations don't have to be, right? So it won't be this hard. I think that a lot of people find it difficult to be politically correct, and it's exhausting and all that stuff. But it won't be in the future if you do the work now. So it won't be hard for your future generations because it'll be natural. It's what they grew up.
yeah.
And then people will just be nice and respectful, like, and no one will be offended because we just have, it's the unlearning that's exhausting. Just something I wanted to throw out there. The last question here says, does anyone ever struggle with being proud of the Spanish language or the colonized parts of our history? Like and then it got cut off. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
like before anyone answers, which I'm sure, like, I want to hear everyone's point of view on this, but just like having so many, first of all, I studied Spanish and Latin American cultures for my undergrad degree, and I lived in Mexico, and I've spoken with a lot of Latinos from all over Latin America, and I feel like the new being proud of Quechua, for example, is being proud of speaking Spanish, because some people don't have Quechua or Nahuatl or Mayan. You know, some people, they don't. But so the closest thing to being not speaking English or not speaking a language that's like so wide known is Spanish, because that's what they grew up with. And also, like, that's the closest thing they know that is different from the present. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all. If that's your identity, like, go for it. But I want to hear from the queens here. Tell me, like, what do you guys think?
Edith, I think it's your turn.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing a little bit of research into where my grandma's from. She's from Pomacanchis, Peru, which is in the Acomayo province of Cusco. And I was like trying to figure out more about the city, the town. It's right next to Lake Pomacanchis, and I couldn't really find anything online. The only thing I found was a Wikipedia page talking about how 90% of the population speak Quechua and like 10% are starting to speak Spanish. And I was like, wow, that statistic, like that alone, it was boggling to me, because she made such a conscious choice to not teach my dad Quechua, to not pass on any of that to my dad and my aunt. And then I see also how that's different, because my uncle, who lives in Calca, which is like an hour and a half outside of like central Cusco, he speaks Quechua, right? And he has a farm, so he speaks it with like farm hands and with the community. He lives in Cusco. And my cousin, who's a little bit older than me, understands it perfectly. I'm like, what happened to that lineage, right? My grandma didn't want to pass it down, but apparently like her siblings did. And yet we're like two people related close to the same age. One knows, he knows 3 languages because he speaks to me in English too. So he knows 3 languages. He knows Quechua, he knows Spanish and English. And I'm here struggling with my Spanish and wishing I knew Quechua, and I'm wishing these things passed down. It only takes 1 generation to lose a language, and in 3 generations, we've almost lost 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then with that too, of course, you feel a little like, oh, I wish I spoke Quechua. I speak Spanish, which is a colonizer language. Then you get into this whole like, I'm proud because I speak Spanish fluently, but like, shouldn't we try to come back to our native language? It's complicated feeling.
Yeah. I mean, for me, being proud of speaking Spanish is just because my family doesn't have another language on my father's side. And it's more attached to the people than the history, as far as like the people who taught it to me. If it was taught to me by people who were horrible and did horrible things, I probably wouldn't have an attachment to it. But for me, Spanish was my father's love language to me. When my father was being cariñoso or like really affectionate with me, he would only speak to me in Spanish. And as a little girl, Spanish was my first language. And the first person I called out to was my father. And so while everyone around me didn't look anything like me and didn't act like me or have my sense of humor or like the kind of food that I did, I had my dad. And despite any disagreements that he and I may have, he always is like, I'm never going to leave you, even if you say stupid stuff. Like, even if you say stuff that I really don't like, I'm never going to leave you, and we could just talk. And so that's always been our vibe. And he's like, I never baby talked you. You know, I wanted you to grow up and be a strong woman. And he said, my dream was for you to argue with me in Spanish. And he was like, that was my dream. I wanted both my daughters to yell at me in Spanish and have big arguments with like facts to back it up. And he instead my father was taken away from me when I was 9. My parents went through a massive divorce that was dramatic. And I remember one day we were with him, and then the next day I wasn't allowed to see my father for weeks. And the cops had taken him away from my house, or had told him to leave our house. And so as you have that aspect as a brown person who's like, father is then asked to leave the house by cops, and then everyone in your neighborhood's like, you're the little brown girl whose daddy was asked to leave by cops. And that was this thing that I carried inside forever. And so Spanish became my comfort. And it was something that when my dad would call, I would feel safe because my father was calling me and telling me he loved me in Spanish and telling me how much he missed me or telling me what we were going to do when we got together. And when he would sing to me or tell me stories, it was always in Spanish. And when my abuelita would call me, or my tío or my tías, it was just like, mijita, mamita, we love you, like we miss you. And it was this place where I wasn't just autistic. I wasn't just different. I wasn't just the brown one who was always causing all the problems in the white family. I was a valid member who was loved and cherished and appreciated for who I was, even though there may have been like arguments about like how much we address the differences and like how much Peru addresses disabilities. It was just like, you're a little different, but you're ours and we love you. And so this thing that I take with me is like, I listen to audiobooks only in Spanish when I want to fall asleep because it comforts me. And I understand that there's such a horrible history behind Spanish, and I hate that, and I struggle with that all the time. And I'm also learning Quechua now. I can't say relearning really. My father only knows the bare minimum. But I'm learning Quechua now as a way to not only be able to bridge that gap and talk to other community members and ask what they need from me, but also as a sign of respect because they had to learn the language that I speak. So it's only fair that I learn the language that they speak because Peru doesn't have just one language. And if I want to be a part of this community, they've put in their 50% of the effort. It's time for me to put in my 50% of the effort. So I think in a way, like I can't ever change the fact that Spanish is colonized or that it was brought to me with love and brought to others on the edge of a sword. But what I can do is make the effort to go the 50% that I owe now, I guess is the only thing I can say about that.
I mean, liquid gold here. The topics you're bringing up are like so on point with just, you know, if you want to take action, do exactly what you were saying, right? Like go backwards to the roots. But it's what I really loved here, because I love taking things that like we say and then putting them into context of like what people can take from this into their daily lives, right? If you're watching this and you hear Spanish being spoken in the US and that threatens you for some reason, you don't know what Spanish could mean to someone, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just like some people think, oh, I'm lazy, I don't want to learn English. What if someone's father was taken away from them when they were young and that is something that comforts them, like the sounds of Spanish? You know nothing. So do not come out of your way to talk to a stranger you don't know and tell them to stop speaking their language, because you don't know what that person's been through. Like
exactly.
bare minimum. Not even talking talking about like politics or what language should be spoken. You don't know the traumas people have been through, y'all. So thank you so much, Teddy, for sharing that story. I think like people would be like really like, whoa, because that's not a typical story about Spanish in general. And I think that that would really like touch people's inner souls, man. So thank you so much
All these
to
kids getting
everyone.
separated at the border and adopted by white families. Where's their language gonna go?
I also want to make a point that, you know, like with the Spanish language, there's that struggle of, you know, because it is a colonized language. You know, my sister hardly speaks any Spanish, and there's an insecurity there because, you know, it just means that she's less of something. And, you know, I have a friend, Kat Lasso, who made this video, about, you know, Latinos and their attachment to Spanish. You know, like my only attachment to Spanish is to be able to speak to my grandparents, you know, now that they're no longer here, but to speak to my family. And that's, you know, what I hold for Spanish is my connection to my identity, my Peruvian identity, because that's all I have. But I feel that even with our identity, because you don't know a particular language, it doesn't make you any less than of who you are and who your parents are. You know, like I've had so many discussions with people that are like, oh, if you don't know Spanish, then you're not a real Latina. First of all, what is Latinidad? Second, it's a colonized language. My people didn't speak Spanish, you know, they spoke different dialects of Quechua. You know, my grandpa in Cerro de Pasco is one type of Quechua. And then where my dad's mom is from, Huancavelica, is a whole different dialect of Quechua. So that's two different, you know, dialects that if they were to continue speaking Quechua and have taught me to speak Quechua, I would have to learn the way my grandpa would have spoken Quechua and the way my other grandma would have spoken Quechua. So like, you know, not knowing the different dialects of Quechua, not knowing how to speak Spanish does not make you any less than of who you are and who your parents are. You know, like knowing how to speak a different language is a privilege that not everyone has because of assimilation. You know, my mom wants my nieces to speak English so that way it's not harder on them when they go to school. And I completely understand that because it was very hard for me when I had to go to school. You know, as a 4-year-old in Peru, I was already almost getting to the first grade. When I got here, when I migrated here, I had to start pre-kindergarten all over again. You know, so like it's the language is just a way for you to just, you know, communicate. The struggle is, you know, whatever I guess you like want it to be, you know, like rather if you struggle, you can always like learn. But again, education is a privilege. And
language is fragile. Like
exactly,
as you said, you can lose it in one generation. Also, who is anyone to say how much someone is of Latino? First of all, language is not culture and culture is not language. So that means that a white person with no background of Spanish could go to school in America, in the United States, and learn Spanish and not have the culture and learn it in a vacuum, which to me is not learning language, but people do it all the time. And then we have someone who knows the Latino culture like the back of their hand, but they just didn't grow up with Spanish because maybe their parents were shamed for speaking it in the US or something like that. Like, you know, like you can't judge someone for not speaking Spanish because essentially they were a baby. They didn't really have a choice. The parents were the ones that teach them, right? So if you were to ask anyone don't ask that person, ask their parents, like, hey, what made you not speak Spanish to your child? Oh, I felt, and then you learn about the traumas they went through, like, oh, I was shamed for it, or oh, my parents didn't teach me. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's super important not to like shame anyone for not knowing their own language, because language is something that we learn from a time where we don't have control over our education.
Exactly. And if you want to, and you know, like a particular person I know, it's like, oh, you know, that's your lineage. What lineage? Colonization? Like, you want to talk about that? Because we got to carry that too. Like, we only speak Spanish because we were colonized. So
very different.
Edith,
exactly.
I'm seeing your comment and I'm like hearing the song in my head, and I'm just like, those songs that like mention every single country, I'm like, is this a marketing ploy? Like, as much as like it's so easy to get people like sucked into, be like, yeah, my country was mentioned, it kind of like ties back to the like, yeah, a white person learned my native language. It's just it's a struggle.
Well, and you'll also do like the men who will do, like, I love reggaeton as much as anybody else, but how many times do you hear a song where they're like, these beautiful women I like these women from this country, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, ladies from Chile, which is like never in a song. I don't know why I pulled that out.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Bad Bunny mentions
but
Puerto
like
Ricans, Dominicans, Colombians,
Venezuelans,
and
I'm
just like,
first of all, what about us? Second of all, like, I'm always waiting, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I know it's not happening.
I just came to this realization. This realization. It's all the countries that touch the Caribbean. I mean, the Caribbean Sea.
It's all the popular at that time.
It's the Caribbean
popular.
The thing is that they'll talk about the women from these countries, but how often you see them protecting the women from these countries?
That's even no.
Like, because you're still seeing these women in a derogatory way.
Yes.
So
I feel like we need like 10 lives about Latino issues. Girls, you are amazing.
Listen.
You are always welcome to come back, because I feel like these discussions are fire. Thank you for your extreme generosity of time. Like, I just went for it with you guys because you were spitting such truths, such facts. And I mean, we've had incredible engagement throughout this entire time, which means people really related to your content. I don't know if you guys were skimming some of the comments that are coming through, but people who really felt seen. They felt seen tonight in the stories that you were saying. They really did feel seen. So I really thank you guys so much for coming today.
Thank you guys so much for. I'm like such a huge fan of you two. I've been like a fan of you guys for a while, and like, I only started following Edith recently, but I've seen your stuff, and I didn't know if it was like, I was like, I don't know, I'm small, I don't know. And then you followed, I think, did you follow? I don't know if I followed you finally, or if you followed. I think I got brave enough and followed you finally. But I have been fangirling like crazy over you guys because I love your work so much. And sitting here with you guys, I have been like trying so hard to hold in the fangirl.
Don't make me cry. Listen,
this is Peruvian love right here.
I had to bring literal sim toys so that I wasn't doing the flaps the whole time.
Listen, I've been folding this napkin. It's so nice to hear those things because I struggle with imposter syndrome every single day, and even doing the podcast, because that's why I had to take a break, because I just, I suffer from depression. I've been diagnosed with bipolar 2, and it's taken me a lot to speak on that. And I feel that, hearing what you just said, I'm just like, I ask myself all the time, does anyone ever listen to me? Is anyone ever listening to me? So it literally makes me feel
I just
so
want to validate
good.
that a heck ton of people were listening to you today and are going to listen.
So
you guys are amazing. Like, literally, I'm so impressed. Like, I also am low-key fangirling right now, trying to keep it profesh. But, like, I mean, come on. I mean, the things you guys have said, like, I couldn't have said or anyone could have said any better. So I really appreciate you guys like taking the time to do this. And y'all, I want you to join me in crushing the imposter syndrome and go follow all of these girls and their podcasts and their art and every project they do, because all this stuff is going to make the world a better place and more aware. If you want to catch more episodes of what in the world is going on, please follow me here at The Dancing Journalist, and please follow these other 3 amazing human queens and listen to their stuff, and just, it's all about validation, y'all. Everyone feels things, and we need to validate more often and learn from each other. So thank you guys so much, and I'm so excited to
Thank
have
you
back in the
guys.
future.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a great
Bye.
Bye. Bring a
So nice to
heart.
meet y'all.
So nice to meet you.